Hey, welcome to Real Estate Resource. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I really hope you enjoy this video.
We've been gone for 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we went through the transfer disclosure. We talked about the form itself and how we should be involved in our client's process of answering those questions on the transfer disclosure. We talked about the importance of them disclosing as much as possible, right? When we start thinking about what it is we do as an agent, we focus so much on our job is to get their home sold, and that's priority number one. But once that happens, our job is to guide them through a transaction and make sure that the substantial amount of money that the majority of them are going to make from the sale of their property, they get to keep afterwards by making sure the disclosures are done properly and that we're advising them the right way to do things through it. And part of that is understanding how to get them to answer the TDS. And part of that transfer disclosure, which we as agents a lot of times kind of just ignore or minimize, is the agent's visual inspection disclosure. And so today I'm going to start with the AVID. We're going to look at that and look at the document. Now the form itself, the AVID, the agent's visual inspection disclosure form, is not required by the state of California. That form is not required. That an agent do a visual inspection, a diligent visual inspection, is required. This form just makes that job 100% easier to make sure that you're doing that diligent visual inspection. Now here in our office, it's required. You don't have the opportunity to just write on the TDS a little, brief explanation of what your visual inspection uncovered. So here you have to do it. But for those agents that are watching this outside on YouTube later, the AVID is not a required form. Is it advised that you use it? 100% for everybody else other than, All Stars agents. For you guys, unfortunately, I'm a stickler and you're going to have to use it. So if there aren't any questions about disclosures or about the AVID, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then that way we can jump right in. Nope. All right, perfect. Let's get going. So right now, what you guys should be looking at is a copy of the AVID. Agent's Visual Inspection Disclosure, California Civil Law 2079, right? So this is for use by an agent when a transfer disclosure statement is required or when a seller is exempt from completing a TDS. So what's a really wordy way to say no matter what, you're required to do this. So even if, for example, your seller is exempt from a TDS, you still have to do your agent's visual inspection. Okay, you're required to do it. That's your duty as an agent. And when we talk about a visual inspection, the thing we have to understand is that you're obviously, number one, not an inspector, right? Like, you're not a home inspector. What you do is what they want you to do is a competent and diligent visual inspection. Competent and diligent, that's it. Which means they actually want you to kind of walk through the house and look for defects. And that's what this is about. This disclosure is about defects. It's not about your opinion of the property. It's not about whether the property looks nice or looks new or has been redone. It has nothing to do with those things. It's solely about defects. And I think that's the biggest issue when I'm looking at files from agents, whether it be our agents in-house or outside agents, and I'm reviewing files when I'm looking at the closings. One of the biggest mistakes that agents make in their visual inspection disclosure is, number one, their opinion, and number two is they start to give maybe an inventory list instead of an inspection list, right? So what happens for us as agents is, because we don't know what to say, we feel like we have to say something. And so sometimes maybe we write down the wrong things. And so as we go and as we get into this about the filling out section of it, we're going to talk about some best practices when it comes to that disclosure. Okay. This inspection disclosure concerns the residential property listed at, right? So it's the property address, pretty straightforward. Then you have this box that says this property is a duplex, triplex, or fourplex. Okay. An avid is required for all units, right? So if I check this off, it means that this is multiple units, right? 2, 3, 4. And I have to have an avid that covers all of the units. Now, I can do one avid for all 4 units if I have 4 units, but it's going to be pretty difficult to get all of my, visual inspection information into one avid. My suggestion is, when you're doing this, just like we talked about 2 weeks ago with the transfer disclosure, you do one avid. And let's say, for example, in this case, this is a triplex. It is a one building triplex, right? It's not separate units. It's one building with 3 units in it. I can do one avid that is the entire outside of the building and the inside of one of the units. And then I would do 2 subsequent avids for the other 2 units inside. I won't have to do the outside. I would just do the inside. So, but if you feel confident that you can get all your information in, the default to this is this avid is for all of the units. If you're going to do something different, if you're going to do an individual avid for each unit, and one of those individual avids includes the exterior of the building, then you're going to check the box and you're going to put which unit number this is, 1, 2, or 3, right? You're going to put that in there. So that's what I think is the best possible way when we're talking about best practice with this. The best possible way is each individual unit has its own avid. Now, when you have multiple buildings, right, structures, so it's one unit is separate, then from the next, then for sure you should be doing individual avids, because again, you're going to be doing exterior disclosure for 3 different properties. Alba has her hand up, so let's see what we can help her with. Go ahead, Alba. Did I ask you to unmute? No, there we go. Go ahead, Alba.
Hi, Kyle. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If it is, you said that if it's a duplex, triplex, we have to do an avid for all units. If it is tenant occupied, and for example, let's say the tenants are not home or they are not letting us in, what would we do in that case?
Yeah, then you're going to just reference on the visual inspection that the unit wasn't available for inspection, and that the tenants weren't allowing anybody into the unit. Yeah, just there's going to be things like that are going to happen. We'll talk about that a little bit, but with tenants specifically, when they don't let you into the unit to do your inspection, there's nothing you can do about that. Like, that's one of the things that, when it comes to tenants, is we can give them the notices, and especially now with the tenant laws as strict as they are, and the protections that the tenants have, you can give them the notice and request the times to go in, but it becomes very specific. And if they refuse, unless you're the landlord, the owner, the housing provider, as they're called now, unless they're going to escalate this to the fact where they're going to start eviction processes, it's just, you're not going to have access to the property, unfortunately. So we just have to reference that in the avid, that whatever the reason was, we didn't have access to the property and could not perform our inspection. There's nothing you can do about that. We can't twist their arm into letting you in. But that's a good question. Thanks for bringing that up, Alba. Okay, firm name. This is the company you work for, right? So in our case, pretty straightforward, is All Stars. Right? So we're going to put the Century 21 All Stars in there. That's the brokerage name. It's not your name, right? It's the brokerage name. It's not the brokerage name and your name. It's just that real estate broker firm name. That's what goes in that first line. Okay? California law requires, with limited exceptions, that a real estate broker or salesperson, collectively the agent, conduct a reasonably competent and digital visual inspection of reasonably and normally accessible areas of certain properties offered for sale, and then disclose to the prospective purchaser material facts affecting the value or desirability of that property that the inspection reveals. The duty applies regardless of whom that agent represents. The duty applies to residential real properties containing 1 to 4 dwelling units and manufactured homes. The duty applies to standalone detached dwelling whether or not located in a subdivision or planned development, or to an attached dwelling such as a condominium. The duty also applies to a lease with an option to purchase, a ground lease, or a real estate property sales contract of one of those properties. So what they're talking about there, it just says up to 4 units, right? So if this becomes a 5 unit, which is technically commercial, or the residential income, you don't have to do these anymore. But 1 to 4 units, you got to do it. And it's condos, single families, mobile homes, you have to do it. It's a reasonably and normally accessible areas. So that means that you're not required to go into the attic. You're not required to go under the house. You're not even required to open and close cabinets. Okay, when I do my visual inspection, I don't have to open a cabinet under a sink. I don't have to peek my head into the attic. I don't have to look under the house and see if I see anything. That's not what a reasonably and normally accessible areas means. So the normally accessible areas that you can get into, if you have access to them. Hey, there's been properties where it's a single family and somebody has a door locked because they rent to a tenant, or they locked a door and lost the key and they can't get in. It's weird things like that, but I don't have access to it. I can't give you a visual inspection of that room. I can make a note. Room is not accessible. Door was locked. Whatever the case is, tenant lived. Room is not accessible. Can't do disclosures. As long as we reference it in the documents, we're good. Okay. California law does not require the agent to inspect the following: areas that are not reasonably normally accessible, areas offside of the property, public records or permits, common areas of planned developments, condominiums, stock cooperatives, and the like. So in a condo, if it's a common area, when you're looking at condos and townhouses, if the area is common area, you don't have to include it in your disclosure. Okay. You don't have to, and as a matter of fact, like, we're not required to go pull permits. And as a matter of fact, I know for those of you guys that have been watching my videos or being in my classes, I strongly advise against you being the one to pull the permits, right? So not only is it that you're not required to, but I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't even do it as like, oh, but it's nice service for me to do. I want to help them out. Just don't do it anymore, right? Don't pull permits. You can go with them. Let them do it. Don't take that responsibility on. And we've talked about it enough that we don't have to go into a ton of time with that. Agent inspection limitations. Because the agent's duty is limited to conducting a reasonably incompetent and diligent visual inspection of reasonably and normally accessible areas of only the property being offered for sale, there are several things that the agent will not do. What follows is a non-exclusive list of examples of limitations on the scope of the agent's duty. It means there could be other things that on this list that limit your duty. Okay, so it's not just limited to this list. There are other things that could get in the way of you being able to perform your visual inspection. In the chat, somebody said, could title company pull permits for the buyers? I mean, they do it, but the problem is that when title goes and pulls it, they give it to you and you provide it to the buyer. And if they missed the permit or made a mistake or got the bad information and you're the one who then relays it to the buyer, guess who's responsible? So I get it, guys. You look for any angle to make things more efficient and to think that you're providing a service to your buyers. Ultimately, your job is to protect your buyer. Okay? So even if the title company gives you the information, the title officer is not, the title rep is not the one that is going and talking to your buyer and saying, here's the permits I pulled. They're giving it to you. And so now you're responsible for any of that information. And if it's wrong, you're going to be responsible. So I get it why you do it, but I would advise against it. Have your buyers be involved in this. You know, they can go to the city just as much, and you could take them there. You could drive them there. I don't care. You could walk them right to hold them by their shoulders, walk them right up to the building permits desk in City Hall and give them a piece of paper to tell them that has a script on what they need to ask for, but let them ask. Okay? I mean, you could do that much. So if the title company gets those permits, do we have the title rep send it to their email? How do they handle that? Don't have your title rep pull it. That's not their job. That would be my answer. Your title rep, if you ask them to send something to via email to your client, is probably not going to do it. But if they're willing to do it from them and say, hey, I pulled these permits for you, not your agent, go for it. But they're not going to do that because they're probably not supposed to be doing it. Okay. Roof and attic. Agent will not climb in onto a roof or into an attic. Pretty self-explanatory. If you guys are climbing up on roofs to do a visual inspection, you're doing way too much. You do too much. Interior. Agent will not move or look under or behind furniture, pictures, wall hangings, floor coverings. Agent will not look up chimneys or into cabinets or open locked doors. So, if I need to go to a place where the door is locked and I can't access it and I can't open locked doors, all I'm going to put is did not have access, door was locked. That's it. Exterior. Agent will not inspect beneath a house or other structure on the property, climb up or down a hillside, move or look behind plants, bushes, shrubbery, and other vegetation or fences, walls, or other barriers. So basically what they're saying is I don't have to go dig to look for an issue. Right? I don't have to, if there's a bunch of bushes in front of the house, I don't need to pull back the shrubs so I can see if there's something affecting the stucco where the shrubs were. If there's a big giant rug on the floor, I don't have to lift up the rug to see if that rug is covering a hole. If there's a giant doormat on the porch, I don't have to move that doormat to see if there's something wrong with the concrete of the porch. That's not what I do. My job is to walk up, look at the property, and see if visually I can determine that there are defects that may affect the desirability of the property in the buyer's eyes. That's it. Appliances and systems. Agent will not operate appliances or systems such as, but not limited to, electrical, plumbing, pool or spa, heating, cooling, septic, sprinkler, communication, entertainment, well, or water to determine their functionability, which means I don't turn on faucets to see if they have good pressure, right? I don't check the electrical panels. I don't check my mind just went blank. The GFCI plugs in bathrooms and kitchens. That's not my job. That's what home inspectors are for. My job is to do a reasonable, diligent, competent, diligent visual inspection of the reasonably accessible areas. So if I walk into the kitchen and I see cracked tiles on the backsplash, that I can disclose. But I can't go, oh, I don't think these are GFCI outlets, so I'm going to disclose that. That's not how it works. The size of the property or improvements, we're not going to measure square footage. Lot improvements or identify, locate boundary lines, easements, or encroachments. I don't have to do that in my visual inspection. Environmental hazards. Agent will not determine if the property has mold, asbestos, lead or lead-based paint, radon, formaldehyde, or any other hazardous substance, or analyze soil or geological condition. Now, for those of you guys that have been on the classes that we've done with Robert Brand, which are fantastic when it comes to the AVID and your responsibility with your disclosure, he's given you lots of great tips on how to disclose what you see without calling it mold or mildew or anything like that. It's not our job to diagnose any of the issues. Okay, so here's a list of all the things that we don't do. Off property. So by statute, agents are not obligated to pull permits or inspect public records. Agent will not guarantee views or zoning. That's a big one too. And I mean, not a lot for us, but there's a lot of times where people say, oh, this has got an amazing view. You're going to have this view for, the next 30 years. And then all of a sudden somebody builds something that cuts off their view. You're not responsible for knowing if that view is going to exist for the life of their living in that home. Right. It's not our job to do that with things with law enforcement, with transportation. Like, hey, the bus is 2 blocks away. What if they close that bus stop? Okay. So it's just, we're not responsible for things like that. For any items disclosed the result of agent's visual inspection or by others, agent will not provide an analysis of or determine the cause or source of the disclosed matter, nor determine the cost of any possible repair. So that's what we're saying is it's not our opinion. I'm not going to diagnose any of the issues. So as we get into how we're going to write things out and how we walk through, If I see that there's a stain on the ceiling, I'm not going to say it's a water stain. I'm just going to say it's a stain, right? I can't. What happens is, and I see it so many times, is people will say things like, oh, this hole was caused by X, by a doorknob, or this stain is, there was a roof leak or whatever. They will put what caused it. It's not our job. And if we're wrong for some reason and it was some other issue, then it's going to cause us to have now retain some liability when this transaction closes. What this means to you, this is what it's saying to the buyer, because really this disclosure is solely for the buyer. I mean, the seller will kind of sign off on some things, but this is for the buyer. Okay? An agent's inspection is not intended to take the place of any other type of inspection, nor is it a substitute for full or complete disclosure by a seller. Regardless of what the agent's inspection reveals or what disclosures are made by sellers, California law specifies that a buyer has a duty to exercise reasonable care to protect himself or herself. This duty encompasses facts which are known to or within the diligent intention and observation of the buyer. Therefore, in order to determine for themselves whether or not the property meets their needs and intended uses, as well as the cost to remedy any disclosed or discovered defect, buyers should review any disclosures obtained by the seller, obtain advice about and inspections of the property from other appropriate professionals, and review any findings of those professionals with the persons who prepared them. If buyer fails to do so, buyer is acting against the advice of brokers. So one of the other things that I see a lot is either in the transfer disclosure, an agent will write, agent advises buyer to get professional home inspection. That is not a visual inspection. Don't ever write that in the TDS. Okay, because that's not you doing a visual inspection. And I still see people on Avids that will write, like in the other term, they'll put buyer's advice to get a home inspection. You don't need to advise. That's not your job to advise them anymore. It's done. They've been advised in their contract. They've been advised by their buyer's agent, and they've been advised in this document alone that they have to go do some stuff for themselves. Okay, so please, if you're listening to this right now, the 37 people that are on here live, or the people that watch this on YouTube later, if you're one of the people that writes, agent advises buyer to get professional home inspection, please stop doing it, because you're making it worse for yourself. That should never be part of a visual inspection. Okay. All right, so here, this property is a duplex, triplex, or full. This is for Avid number 1, right? For unit number 1, we did that. The undersigned, based on the undersigned, based on a reasonably competent and diligent visual inspection of the reasonably and normally accessible areas of the property, states the following. The undersigned is you, the agent that is completing this Avid. So in the entryway, excluding common areas, right? So if we're talking about a townhouse or a condo, the entryway is going to be solely about the structure. In a house, it could be from the sidewalk up, walking into the house. That's the entryway. We're going to put whatever we may see. Now, if you don't see a defect, then you're going to write, that's it. Nothing to note. You're not going to put, oh, the house has a red front door. No, it doesn't matter. And again, for those of you guys that have been through Robert Barron's class, and I think it's one of the greatest things that he talks about, is that once you begin doing that, now you're taking an inventory, which means every room you go into, you're going to have to do the same thing. You're going to have to start stating red door, white walls, wood floors all the time. That's not what your job is. Your job is to find defects. What about writing buyers to check with local municipalities as to square footage, bedroom? No, they already been advised to do that. That's not part of your visual inspection. Only thing that goes in here is your visual inspection. And now, Robert Brand, his one caveat to visual inspection is it's a sensory thing, right? He said it's like my sensory perception. You can reference odors, right? You can reference odors, but again, not specific. You just have to say there is an odor. in the room or in the area or whatever, but everything is what you see, and you telling them that they have to go check with the city about permits and square footage, that's not you doing anything visual. So no, absolutely not. That should not be on your visual inspection anywhere, because again, it was right here already written in the Avid that that's what the buyer should be doing anyway. Okay. What about pet odor throughout? Yeah, I mean, you could do, but my thing would be possible odor, possible pet odor, or I would just put odor. And I think we're gonna have Robert in the next month or so, so we can get into a little bit more with what he advises as far as when it goes with pet odors. But I would be as non-specific as possible, right? So, for example, when I say non-specific, is let's say we walk in the living room and they had a bunch of artwork on the walls and they've now taken it down, and you can see all the holes from the hanging of the artwork, right? You could see every hole from all the stuff, and it's covering this one giant wall, a lot of holes. What would you disclose? How would you disclose that you saw those holes in the living room, right? So there's Melissa in the chat said holes in wall, and that's it. Not holes caused by nails. Not seller had a lot of artwork and there are holes left from the fasteners that held up it is holes in wall. I don't care how big they are, how small they are. If you know exactly what caused it, it is holes in wall, and that's it. That's it. Holes in wall. Now, if you want to specify which wall it is, you could do, holes in east wall, holes in west wall, north wall, whatever. If you want to do that, that's fine. So you can specify exactly what wall it was, but holes in wall, period. Not small, right? That's now becomes diagnosing. And if I put small holes in wall, that's my opinion that it's small. And I know it sounds silly to say, well, if it's a nail hole, it is a small hole. Yeah, I get it. But that's still my opinion of small. And to a buyer, they could have a different opinion of how that defect affects them in their desirability of the property. Okay. So if it is a hole or multiple holes, it is hole in wall or holes in wall, right? That's it. That's how it works. That's how we're going to do it. Let's see in text. Can we write third room? It seems not permitted. No. That's your opinion. You don't know it for sure. And it goes back to this right here. It goes back to here, right here. Agent will not measure square footage or identify, locate boundary lines. These are encroachments. We're not going to look at if anything is permitted or not. That's not our job. That's not our job. It's a visual inspection. Even if the room isn't permitted, I'm still going to, no, you're not going to put may or may not be permitted on here either. That's not your visual inspection. Your visual inspection is defects. Now, if that room is unpermitted and the seller failed to, let's say this other room here is non-permitted and the seller doesn't disclose it or does disclose it on their TDS, all I'm still writing here is, are there any holes in the wall, cracks in the wall, stains in the ceiling, stains in the floor? Is there any other defect that I'm going to recognize in that room? That's it. That's it. It's not my job to do that. Now, in the visual inspection, not my job. Now, on the MLS, if the seller says to me, hey, that room is not permitted, then yeah, I'm going to put on the MLS, seller states that third bedroom is not permitted. But I'm not putting it in my disclosure here. I'm going to make sure the seller puts it in their disclosure in the TDS and the SPQ. Bertha, yes, you had a question.
Yeah, so what about if I perform the inspection in my Avid on the day of the home inspection?
No.
And steal furniture, and then they remove, and then it's been done already.
Okay, so two things. You should never do your Avid when the home inspector is doing their inspection. Because the home inspector is going to uncover some things during the home inspection that you probably wouldn't have done during your visual inspection. And if you're doing it at the same time and they're uncovering it, then now it's going to add to the things that you have to add to your visual inspection. And so it now hypes up your liability. So no, don't do it then. There's going to show the date that the visual inspection was done. So if anything happens after the fact of that visual inspection, you're not responsible for the changes to the visual inspection based on when you did it. When it comes to furniture being moved, that there was furniture that was in a certain place when you did your visual inspection, and when the seller moves out, that furniture is gone, you're also not responsible for that. It just stated that earlier in the avid. So again, it's just what you see as far as defects go at the moment that you performed that inspection, and that's it.
Okay.
Let me see what do you got here. What about a 5'5" area of roof shingles are different color? Owner had roof repaired with different color shingles. If you can see it from the entryway, from walking up the house without you going up there, you could, I suppose you could say that there are different color shingles in this 5'5" area than the rest of the property. But that's it. I don't care if it's on the aerial pictures. Your visual inspection isn't done by aerial pictures. Mm-hmm. Your visual inspection is done by you being in there. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So again, the thing is that what we're talking about in a visual inspection is really limited to your perception of the property at the moment, right? And again, it's what you hear, what you smell, and what you see, and that's about it. If you feel like the floor may be uneven, if it's enough that you can feel it walking through a room, then go for it. Go ahead and write that. Hey, floor appears to be uneven or sloped. Appears to be, okay. But again, with the idea that I have to now say, like, I see this a lot as like a new cabinets. That's your visual inspection. Well, that's not a defect, right? So if there's no defect, again, I'm not going to state it has new cabinets. I'm just going to put nothing to note. The effect of nothing to note is to say that, hey, listen, I walked through every room and I didn't see anything that I felt was a defect that was going to affect the desirability of the property. That's fine. It's when we start to leave things blank or start just saying new carpet, new floor, new paint, the stuff like that, new ceiling fan. Like, those are silly things to put, because now it's just, again, we're just doing an inventory of the property and we're not giving them any disclosure. There's no proof that we attempted to do a disclosure. At least with the nothing to note, what it's saying is I took a look at the property and I saw that there was nothing to note as far as a defect goes. Okay, so that's got to start being your practice, is nothing to note, period. Okay, so you're going to do that as you go through each room. If there's anything that's like no, do not write remodeled. Somebody just wrote, can I write remodeled, nothing noted? No, do not write remodeled. Again, that is not a defect. Nothing to note is fine, or nothing noted is fine. Do not write remodeled. Do not put updated. Do not put new paint. Don't put any of that stuff, because it has meaningless when it comes to a visual inspection for you guys. This is not about like you writing like, oh, I have to make the property sound good. That's not what this is for. That's what your MLS is for. Your MLS is for you guys to fluff up the property and new paint and this and all those great things, and it was totally remodeled and all that stuff. That's not what this is for. Again, just stick to defects. Just ultimately, when I walk into a room, do I see anything that I think would cause a buyer to feel less enthusiastic about purchasing this home? That's it, period. Okay? So here's all the exterior stuff if you need more room. Now what it says is right here, this disclosure is based on a reasonably competent and diligent visual inspection of reasonably and normally accessible areas of the property on the date specified above, right, where we did this up here, right? Here's the date we did it. Where is it? Where did the date go? Oh, no, it's the date and times right here. Real estate broker, name of firm. That's All Stars. The agent's name is going to go here. Okay. So it was, I did it. I can't even type my own name. Right? So I did it. What time did we do it? So what time is it right now? It's 3:27 at 11:37. And weather conditions right now, what? It's a little overcast. And if there was anybody else there with me, if the buyer was there, if I had another agent, if we were working on it, whoever's there with me, and then I'm going to sign it and date it, me, the person that performed it, then we're going to send it to the buyer to sign. Do you notice there isn't a avid for the listing agent and avid for the buyer's agent? There is one avid form, and it's because the only person that we care about signing it is the buyer. The seller can acknowledge that they got a copy of it. Okay. And then the other broker, the buyer's agent or the listing agent, depending on who you represent, is going to sign here. The seller is not required to initial. Okay. So understand that this part right here is important, because what it's going to say to them is that when you performed your visual inspection, this is the date and time you did it, and this is the conditions it was under. If during the sunny days it has a different things that you may have noticed, you could say, well, it was overcast that day, or this is the day I did it. And then if something happened after the fact, you're not responsible for that visual inspection because it was done on this date. Okay. Let's see what we had. Can another agent do the avid if I'm not available? No. My seller signed on the buyer's signature line when I gave it to them to initial. Should we fix it? Yes, your seller doesn't need to sign it, only the buyer. So you should redo that because you need to have a place for the buyer to sign. So, okay. Any other questions? Any other questions about the avid before I move on? Okay. I think we really have to start taking this avid seriously. I'm going to tell you that right now there's a threat of a potential lawsuit that has nothing to do with the avid. By the way, the conditions of this lawsuit have nothing to do with the avid, but the avid is one of the pieces that they're trying to use as a way to show that there was some a level of negligence on our part, which is not true, but I'm just letting you guys know. They're using this avid as a red herring, basically, in a lawsuit that has nothing to do with what an avid would cover. Go ahead, Bertha.
I might missed it. On the very last part, on the acknowledged, it says the initial below and broker signature not required. So, but it has the seller initials. So, I never take a look into that. We should follow like the seller, and it says like they have received a copy. So can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not required because this disclosure is solely for the buyers. So it's not required that the seller has a copy. Do I believe that you should be giving a copy and that it should be acknowledged that your seller saw this also? Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, any other questions about the avid? So again, take this seriously, guys. And now, and I did say this 2 weeks ago when we were doing the TDS. This avid is, by default becomes a part of the transfer disclosure because it's referenced in the transfer disclosure, and the transfer disclosure is required to be delivered to the buyer within 7 days of acceptance. And the buyer has to then review the disclosure and send them back within 17 days after acceptance. So if we're doing our avid anywhere outside of that 17 days, or we're outside of the 7 days, we're giving the buyer an opportunity to extend their contingency period for investigations and inspections. So my suggestion is, whether you be buyer or listing agent, that you find a way to complete your avid within 7 days of acceptance. Now, if I'm a listing agent, guess what should have happened already? My avid should have been done prior to even marketing the property, like the rest of my disclosures. If I'm a buyer's agent, I should be hustling to get an appointment and get into that property to do my avid as soon as possible after acceptance, so that I can have it, make sure that my buyer has it as part of their disclosure package. Okay, so you guys got to start making a real effort on this, because the majority of agents are very lackadaisical when it comes to getting this completed. And it's disheartening, because there's agents that are out there that are trying to do them at the final walkthrough because they know they have to have them to get paid. And those of you that are listening know who you are if you do that, and hopefully the majority of you aren't doing something like that. But I would really strongly advise you to make sure that you're taking every opportunity available to get this done in the first 7 days of your acceptance if you're the buyer's agent. Okay. All right, moving on. Let's go to the SPQ. It's the SPQ, the Seller's Property Questionnaire. Again, this is a disclosure that has to be filled out by the seller. As you can see here, it doesn't allow me as buyer's agent to check off any of these boxes to answer any of the questions. So this is the responsibility of the seller. But just like when we talked about 2 weeks ago with the TDS, is we should be helping them we should help guide them through this document. I think that there's a handful of agents, maybe 2 handfuls of agents out there in this world that like to just deliver the disclosure documents to their seller and say, hey, go at it, answer the questions, and give them back to me when you're done. And they're kind of really hands off with the process. And again, like I said at the beginning of this, I know as an agent, our top priority, our number one objective is to get their home sold. But number one, it's like that's 1A, get it sold. 1B is let me guide and protect them through the transaction. So in part of 1B is me going through disclosures and making sure they understand what's happening, right? And so we've got to stop taking that hands off where we like, oh, my transaction coordinator is going to do that, or my assistant is going to do that, and I'm going to keep going out there for sales. I understand the thought process behind it, but when you're not involved and you're the one who's licensed and something happens in these disclosures, you're going to be responsible, not your assistant nor the TC. So keep that in mind, okay? So you're strongly advised to carefully. First off, this form is not a substitute to the real estate transfer disclosure statement. It is used by the seller to provide an additional information when a TDS is completed. If seller is exempt from completing a TDS, seller should complete an exempt seller disclosure, Sierra Form ESD, or may use this form instead. So an ESD is for sellers who are exempt from TDS, and the only sellers that are exempt from TDSs are REOs, probates, and trust sales where the successor trustee is the one that is doing the sale. And if the successor trustee, in that case of the trust, if that property was their principal residence, then they are required to do a TDS and an SPQ. But if it's not, if it's an REO, a trust with a successor trustee selling the property, or a probate, or a conservatorship, right, that exists, it's kind of the same as a probate, then you're not required to do the SPQ. You're not required to do the TDS. What you are required to do, and I should have added it, and I don't think I did, is let me do it now. Oh, maybe I did add it, and I just didn't know. Guess not. Huh. That's weird. Sorry. Oh, there it is. Okay. So then we can go to the exempt seller's disclosure, which is similar to the SPQ. It's kind of like a mix of the SPQ and the TDS. It's just the very specific questions, and that's it. It's 1 page. Nobody else can use that ESD. So just so you guys are aware, investors can't. Even if I was an investor and I were able to, and I purchased a property, from an auction. Right, it was an REO auction, and I purchased through that. Once I resell the property, I am still required to provide a transfer disclosure statement and a seller property questionnaire. Yeah, the only people that are exempt from the SPQ and the TDS are probates and conservatorships, trust sales where the successor trustee is selling the property and it wasn't their principal residence, and REOs. Everybody else is required to provide you with a TDS and an SPQ. Okay. So in this SPQ, and I don't want to because it's a lot of the same questions as what was in the TDS, and it's the same. I'm just going to kind of go over these top parts here and then talk about how we're guiding our clients through it, and then talk about that new law that changed in July about disclosing things from. We're just going to talk about that because I want to be done with disclosures today so we can move on to something else next Thursday. But going through every question is not going to help us do anything. We're just going to look at it as an overview here. Okay, so you are strongly advised to carefully review the disclosure information advisory before you complete the seller property questionnaire. All sellers of California real property are required to provide various disclosures, either by contract or by statute or case law. Many disclosures must be made within certain time limits. Timely and thorough disclosures help to reduce disputes and facilitate a smooth sales transaction. And that's a great little kind of disclaimer that they put at the top, because I would tell you guys that 99.9% of the lawsuits that affect a real estate professional and buyers and sellers is all due to non-disclosure. It's all due to disclosure issues. So the more clarity there are in your disclosures and the more forthcoming you are in the disclosures as the seller, the less chance that you're going to put yourself in a position where that you're going to get sued or be open to that kind of liability. Okay. Seller makes the following disclosures with regard to the real property or manufactured home described as. Pretty straightforward. It's the address. Again, just like the AVID and the TDS, this property is a duplex, triplex, or fourplex. An SPQ is required for all units. This SPQ is for all units or for either units 1, 2, or 3, or 4, whatever it is. Okay. Disclosure limitation. The following are representations made by the seller and are not the representations of the agents, if any. The if any, just like in the TDS, is there because this disclosure is required whether there are agents involved on either side. Right? If this is a for sale by owner or somehow a buyer is going in non-represented, this is still a disclosure that is required. Okay? This disclosure statement is not a warranty of any kind by the seller or any agents and is not a substitute for any inspections or warranties the principals may wish to obtain. This disclosure is not intended to be part of the contract between buyer and seller unless otherwise specified in writing. Broker and any real estate licensee or other person working with or through broker has not verified information provided by seller. A real estate broker is qualified to advise on real estate transactions. If seller or buyer desires legal advice, they should consult an attorney. Note to seller, purpose, to tell the buyer about known material or significant items affecting the value or desirability of the property and help to eliminate misunderstandings about the condition of the property. Answer based on actual knowledge and recollection at this time. Something that you do not consider material or significant may be perceived differently by a buyer. Think about what you would want to know if you were buying the property today. Read the questions carefully and take your time. If you do not understand how to answer a question or what to disclose or how to make disclosure in response to a question, whether it's on this form or a TDS, you should consult a real estate attorney in California of your choosing. A broker cannot answer the questions for you or advise you on the legal sufficiency of any answers or disclosures you provide. Okay, so again, we can guide them through this, but we can't give them advice like, oh, you should disclose that because this is this law or whatever, or you shouldn't disclose it because you don't want people to know about it. We can't give advice. We can just guide them. And what I mean by guidance is when we answer the questions, if we're going through there, just say, can you remember anything that went wrong with that? Nope. Okay, great. Then it's no. Okay. It's not that we're telling them, ooh, you need to write down this, and the other thing. If we tell them what to write, then again, we start to take on liability. Note to buyer, purpose: to give you more information about known material significant items affecting the value or desirability of the property, and to help eliminate misunderstandings about the condition of the property. Something that may be material significant to you may not be perceived the same way by the seller. So they're putting it kind of back on them too, like, hey, just because you thought it was doesn't mean they did, and they weren't being malicious when they didn't answer the question yes as opposed to no. If something is important to you, be sure to put your concerns and questions in writing on the BMI. That's the buyer material issues form that they would give to their buyer's agent, so that the buyer's agent would know to make sure that we're directing through to get them the information that they want. Sellers can only disclose what they actually know. Seller may not know about all material or significant items, and that's true. We don't know anything. We don't know everything about our houses, okay? Sellers' disclosures are not a substitute for your own investigations, personal judgments, or common sense, which is supremely uncommon in real estate transactions from all parties involved. Seller awareness. For each statement below, answer the question, are you, seller, aware of, by checking either yes or no. A yes answer is appropriate no matter how long ago the item being asked about happened or was documented, unless otherwise specified. Explain any yes answers in the space provided, or attach an additional comments and check paragraph 19. Okay? So, as you're guiding your clients, remember it's, are you, seller, aware of? If they're not aware of it, then guess what the answer is? No. So when you go through any of these questions, they're all yes or no. This one, the first one, like this one, documents, reports, inspections, disclosure, warranties. Are you, the seller, aware of any of these pertaining to an encroachment or easement or boundary dispute? If you are, then yes, and you give an explanation here. If you're not, then it's no. Same thing with the rest of these questions. Within the last 3 years, was there a death of an occupant? Was there or wasn't there? Are you aware of it? Yes, yes. If no, no. Okay? So it's pretty straightforward when we're answering these questions. The thing is, we have to make sure that they're not missing questions, because it happens a lot where people miss questions. And especially, I'm going to tell you, this one right here, number 6L right here, gets missed a lot because it's at the very top of the page, right under their property addresses. Sellers missed a lot. And what that tells me, when sellers miss that one a lot, is that that agent wasn't there with them going over the SPQ when they filled it out. Okay? So again, are you, the seller, aware of? That's how we're going to guide them through that. We're going to just every time ask them that question. Are you aware of this? No? Then put no. Are you aware of this? Yes? Then let's put yes and tell me what you were aware of. Let's write that explanation down. And if there's not enough room in these explanation pages, which are 2 lines and probably aren't going to be enough, you could just put see addendum number 1. And all of your explanations could be on addendum number 1 to the SPQ. Just reference what question you're explaining. Okay? Now, I'm going to skip through those because they're all the same thing. Are you, the seller, aware of? That's it. And again, we're not supposed to tell them you have to disclose this or you can't. We just have to get them through, are you aware of it or are you not? And the chances are, if we're doing that, if we're having those conversations with them where we're saying, are you aware of it or are you not? Things are going to start to come to mind. They're going to start remembering, oh yeah, we did have a problem with this. Okay, well, it doesn't matter how long ago it was. If there was an issue with your roof, you got to disclose it. If there was an issue with this, you have to disclose it, even if you repaired it. Okay? Now, what we are going to get to is, where's the section? Oh, where was the section? My mind just went blank. Right here. Okay. Repairs and alterations. This section F is new, right? Whether you purchase a property within 18 months of accepting an offer to sell it. Yes or no? Did you? Is this a flip? Did you buy it in the last 18 months? Yes. Okay, great. If yes, have any room additions, structural modifications, or other alterations or repairs, collectively improvements, been performed by a contractor while you have owned the property? Now, that's the important part. If we say yes to F1, that a contractor did it, Then it says here, note 1, if yes to F1, seller shall provide in the explanation below a list of the improvements and the name of the contact information for each contractor who performed services of $1,000 or more. Okay. If yes to F1, seller shall provide the explanation below a list of those improvements which seller has obtained permits, and seller shall attach copies of those permits to this SPQ. And for those improvements which seller does not have a permit, seller shall include a statement identifying those improvements and that seller was not provided permits by third party making the improvement and the contact information for such third parties from whom the buyer may obtain those permits. The key thing in this is if you hired a contractor to do the work, okay? A lot of these people that are doing flips are not hiring contractors. And what they mean by a contractor, somebody who is licensed, bonded in the state of California, has a contractor's license. If you're hiring a handyman or you have your own work crew that are not contractors, then your answer to that contractor is no. But you still need to disclose that it wasn't done by a contractor, and if anything is unpermitted, you still have to disclose that. Okay. So again, remember, this is solely if a contractor did it. So if you don't hire a contractor, this disclosure is going to be a little different than you. If you do hire licensed contractors to do the work on these flips, on these less than 18-month-old properties, then you're going to have to disclose who the contractor is and what repairs they did over $1,000, and give them a copy of any permits that were pulled by that contractor. Yes, Bertha, go ahead.
Thank you. So is this only the seller to disclose for the last 12 months or
18 months? If you've owned the property for less than 18 months. You're talking about specifically 7F?
Oh, okay. If it's more, then...
If you've owned the property for more than 18 months, you still should disclose any room modification alterations that you did, whether they were done with permits or not, but you don't have to give them the contractor's information and all of that.
How far back?
If
let's say
if you made repairs 5 years ago and you have the information about the repairs you made 5 years ago, disclose it.
Okay.
At the very beginning of this, when we were reading through the top, it says it doesn't matter how long ago.
Okay.
If you have a recollection, if you're aware of this happening, you've got to disclose it. So there's no time limit on it if you're aware of it. Now, if it happened before you were the owner, then you don't need to disclose it. But if you were the owner and you know you made an alteration or a change, it doesn't matter if it was 25 years ago. You need to disclose it.
Got it.
Okay? And Jesus, go ahead. Well, it wouldn't be a contract class with Jesus in attendance without a question.
You know that. That was a little gray area. I misunderstood last time, last contract, last sale that I had. It never specified licensed contractor. Until now that you mentioned the contractor, it means licensed. I mean, you can be a contractor without a license.
No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't. They don't consider you a contractor. You could do work like that, but you're not a contractor without a contractor's license. You're not a contractor.
Okay. So now I know that contractor means having a license, of course.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So that got us to the end of disclosures. Does anybody else have any questions regarding the disclosures that we talked about? 2 weeks ago, the TDS, today, the AVID and the SPQ and the ESD. And the ESD is, again, very similar to that. It's, are you the seller aware of? And that's all they have to disclose. So, but just keep in mind, I see a lot of and I can't control it, we can't control it, of listing side agents that are providing ESDs when they're not exempt from TDSs and SPQs, and obviously we can't do anything about it. What I would suggest you guys do, if you're getting an ESD as opposed to a TDS or SPQ from an outside office and you don't believe it's legitimately that they're exempt from TDS and SPQ, you should at least have some kind of communication in writing with your buyer that they understand that they're not getting the proper disclosures and that they want to move forward. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, guys? No? All right. I appreciate you all being here. Thank you so much. We'll get on to a new topic next week, and I look forward to seeing you guys then. So take care. Be productive. See you soon.